I still remember the exact moment everything in my life cracked open. It happened on a cold December evening, just before Christmas, when my son Ethan walked into my small apartment carrying a bottle of expensive wine and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Mom," he said casually as he took off his coat, "how's the beach house I bought you? You finally getting used to the ocean air?" I laughed at first, thinking it was some kind of joke. A strange one, sure, but Ethan had always had a dry sense of humor. "What beach house?" I asked, still smiling. The silence that followed felt wrong. Too heavy. Too sharp. Ethan's expression shifted, slowly, like a shadow moving across his face. "The one in Clearwater Bay. I got it free last year. Don't tell me you've already forgotten." My stomach dropped. "I think I would remember something like that," I said quietly. And just like that, the world tilted. For the past 2 years, I had been living in survival mode. I worked nights cleaning office buildings downtown, empty spaces filled with echoes and fluorescent lights. My hands were always dry from chemicals, my back constantly aching, and my paycheck barely enough to cover rent, groceries, and the medication I stretched far longer than I should have. Some weeks I had to choose. Food or medicine. Heat or electricity. I told myself it was temporary. That Ethan was busy. That he was building something big. That one day, things would get easier. He had always been ambitious. Even as a kid, he used to say he'd take care of me when he made it. And he did make it. At 34, he owned a thriving startup. Tech consulting. Big clients. Big money. Big life. Just not with me in it. Our calls became shorter over time. Less personal. More distant. Always rushed. "I'll call you later, Mom. I'm in a meeting. Let's catch up next week." Weeks turned into months. Still, I was proud of him. I never complained. That evening, I had spent hours preparing dinner for him. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, his favorite green beans with garlic, even a small chocolate cake I could barely afford. I wanted everything to be perfect, because no matter how much time passed, he was still my son. When he arrived, he looked like he belonged to another world. Tailored coat, polished shoes, a watch that probably cost more than my yearly rent. Behind him walked his wife, Vanessa. Elegant, beautiful, always perfectly put together. She gave me a warm smile, but something about it always felt rehearsed. "Charlotte," she said softly, kissing my cheek. "It smells amazing in here." We sat down to eat. Ethan talked about expansion, investors, new offices, big opportunities. Vanessa added details about their recent trip to Italy, casually mentioning things like private tours and boutique hotels. I nodded, smiled, listened. But inside, I felt smaller and smaller, like I no longer fit into his world. Then came the question, the one that changed everything. "How's the beach house?" Ethan asked again, leaning back in his chair. I set down my fork, slowly, carefully. "I told you," I said, my voice barely steady. "I don't have a beach house." Vanessa froze. Just for a second. But I saw it. Ethan frowned. "That's not possible. I transferred everything to your name. The property, the paperwork, even the monthly support." My heart started pounding. "What support?" He blinked. "The money. I've been sending you $2,000 every month." The room went silent. I felt like I couldn't breathe. "Ethan," I whispered, "I haven't received anything from you. Not a single dollar." Vanessa stood up abruptly. "Oh, sorry," she said quickly. "I just remembered I need to make a call. It's important." She rushed into the other room. Too fast. Too nervous. Too guilty. Ethan was already pulling out his phone, his expression tightening. "That doesn't make sense," he muttered. "I have records. Transfers. Everything." I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. $2,000. Every month. For 2 years. That was nearly $50,000. Money that could have changed everything for me. Money that could have saved me from nights of hunger and worry. Ethan, I said, my voice trembling, I've been skipping medication because I couldn't afford it. Last week I had to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. He went pale. From the other room, I could hear Vanessa's voice.
Low. Urgent. Panicked.
I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to. Something was very wrong. Show me, I said. Ethan nodded, already scrolling through his phone. I'll call my assistant, he said. She handled everything. No. Vanessa's voice suddenly cut in as she reappeared in the doorway. Too quickly. Too sharply. Maybe we should talk about this later, she said, forcing a smile. Charlotte doesn't need more stress right now. I looked at her, really looked, at the tension in her shoulders, at the way her fingers twisted around her ring, at how she couldn't meet my eyes. No, I said calmly. We're talking about this now. Ethan made the call, put it on speaker, and within seconds, the truth began to unravel. Yes, the property was transferred last year, the assistant confirmed, and the monthly payments have been sent regularly to the account provided. What account? I asked. She read out the last 4 digits. Not mine. Not even close. Ethan's eyes snapped to Vanessa. Who gave you that account information? He asked slowly. A pause. Then the answer. Your wife did. Everything inside me went cold. Vanessa didn't speak, didn't move, didn't even try to deny it. And in that moment I knew,
somehow, some way,
she had taken everything that was meant for me. And the worst part? She had been sitting at my table, smiling at me, for 2 years. That night was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it became the beginning of something much darker. Because what we uncovered that evening was only the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. I sat at the kitchen table long after Ethan and Vanessa stopped talking, long after the plates had gone cold, long after the air in the apartment turned heavy with something none of us wanted to name out loud. Betrayal. It wasn't loud or dramatic the way people imagine it. It didn't come with shouting or broken glass. It was quiet,
slow,
suffocating. Like realizing the ground beneath you had been hollow for a very long time. You just hadn't noticed until now. Ethan kept pacing the room, his phone in his hand, going through emails, bank transfers, documents. Every few seconds he'd stop, scroll, mutter something under his breath, then keep moving. I had never seen him like that before. Not confident, not in control, just shaken. Vanessa stood near the window at first, arms crossed, staring outside like she was waiting for this to somehow disappear if she ignored it long enough. But reality doesn't work like that. Eventually, Ethan stopped pacing and looked directly at her. And when he did, I saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Not anger yet, not fully, but suspicion, sharp and growing. Vanessa, he said, his voice low but steady. You need to explain this. Right now. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked slowly toward the table and sat down, folding her hands like she was trying to hold herself together. I watched her carefully. For 2 years, I had thought I understood her. Thought she was just distant, maybe a little cold, but polite. Now I realized I had never known her at all. There must be a misunderstanding, she said finally. I almost laughed. A misunderstanding? 2 years. Tens of thousands of dollars. A house I had never seen. And this was a misunderstanding? Ethan didn't react the way I expected. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't argue. That made it worse. Much worse. Then explain it, he said. She swallowed. I could see it the moment she realized there was no easy way out.
No small excuse.
No quick fix. I updated the account details, she admitted quietly. You were busy and your assistant kept asking for confirmations. I just handled it. Handled it how? Ethan asked. I changed the account number. To whose account? Silence. The kind that answers everything. My chest tightened. I already knew the truth before she said it. Mine, she whispered. It felt like the room shrank. Like the walls, moved closer. Like there wasn't enough air left. Ethan stared at her, completely still. You're telling me that for 2 years, every payment I sent to my mother went to you? Vanessa nodded, barely. And the house? I asked, my voice surprisingly calm. Where is that? She hesitated again, and that hesitation said more than any words ever could. My parents are living there, she said. Something inside me cracked then. Not loudly, not violently, just quietly broke. All this time, I said slowly, while I was counting coins at the grocery store, your family was living in my house. It wasn't like that, she said quickly. They were struggling. They were going to lose everything. I just needed time to help them get back on their feet. With my life? I asked. With money that wasn't yours to take? I was going to give it back, she snapped, her voice rising for the first time. I just needed more time. How much time? Ethan asked coldly. Another year? 5? Forever? She didn't answer, because there was no answer. Ethan turned away from her and ran his hands through his hair, something he hadn't done since he was a teenager. I remembered that gesture. It meant he was overwhelmed, trying to think, trying to fix something that felt impossible. Do you even understand what you've done? He asked finally. Yes, she said, but her voice didn't sound convincing. No, he said sharply. You don't. My mother has been struggling to survive while you were spending her money. She could have gotten sick. She could have. He stopped himself, but the words hung in the air anyway. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking again. Not from anger, from exhaustion. 2 years of quiet suffering suddenly had a reason, and somehow that didn't make it better. It made it worse, because it hadn't been bad luck. It had been theft. How much? I asked. Vanessa closed her eyes. All of it, she said. Ethan let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh, but there was no humor in it. All of it, he repeated. Every payment. Every transfer. And the house, I added. She nodded. The silence that followed was unbearable. Then Ethan said something I didn't expect. Pack your things. Vanessa looked up, confused. What? You heard me, he said. You're leaving tonight. Her face went pale. Ethan, please. No, he cut her off. There is no please. There is no explanation that fixes this. You stole from my mother. You lied to me for 2 years. You used my trust to do it. I was trying to help my family, and you destroyed mine in the process. She started crying then, loudly, desperately, but it didn't move me. I thought it would. I thought I would feel something, pity maybe, sadness, but there was nothing, just emptiness, because while she cried, all I could think about were the nights I had gone to bed hungry, the mornings I had woken up wondering how I would afford my medication, the times I told myself I just needed to be stronger, more patient, more understanding, all while she knew. She knew. Where exactly is the house? Ethan asked. Clearwater Bay, she said through tears. My parents, they've been renovating it. Renovating. With my money. Living my life. In my home. Ethan grabbed his coat. We're going there tomorrow. Vanessa shook her head quickly. Please don't. We are, he said firmly. And after that, I'm calling a lawyer. Her crying got louder, but it didn't change anything. After she left that night, taking the suitcase, her hands trembling, her voice still begging for forgiveness, the apartment felt different. Quieter, but not peaceful. Heavy, like something had been ripped out, leaving behind a space that didn't know how to exist yet. Ethan sat across from me at the table, his face pale, his eyes tired. I thought you were okay, he said quietly. I thought I was helping you. You were, I said gently. You just trusted the wrong person. He looked down, guilt written all over his face. I should have checked. Maybe, I said. But you believed your wife. That's not a crime. What she did was. We sat there for a long time without speaking. Then I said something that surprised even me. I want to see Everything. Ethan looked up. What? All the documents. The transfers. The house papers. Everything, I said. I need to understand what she did, not just feel it. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Okay. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, one thought kept repeating in my mind. This wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about a house. It was about 2 years of my life. Stolen, rewritten, twisted into something that was never supposed to happen. And, the worst part, I had lived through it without even knowing. The next day, we were going to see that house. My house. And somehow I knew that was only the beginning of the truth. The next morning felt unreal, like I was stepping into someone else's life instead of my own. Ethan picked me up early, just after sunrise. I hadn't slept much again, but this time it wasn't shock keeping me awake. It was anticipation. A quiet, heavy kind that sat in my chest and refused to leave. I kept thinking about the house. My house. The one I had never seen, never touched, never lived in, yet somehow belonged to me. As we drove, the city slowly faded behind us. Gray buildings turned into open roads, then into stretches of quiet neighborhoods, and eventually into something calmer, almost peaceful. Clearwater Bay wasn't far, but it felt like a different world entirely. Clean air, wide streets, houses spaced far apart. Everything slower, softer. This is it, Ethan said finally, turning into a long driveway. And then I saw it. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. The house stood right by the water, large windows reflecting the morning light, a wide porch wrapping around the front, trees swaying gently in the breeze. It looked like something out of a dream, the kind of place people retire to, the kind of place where life is supposed to feel easy. This was what Ethan had wanted for me. Not the cramped apartment. Not the endless nights of work. Not the quiet struggle I had convinced myself was normal.
This.
I stepped out of the car slowly, my legs unsteady. It didn't feel real. It couldn't be real. I had spent 2 years believing my life was small, limited, defined by what I could barely afford. And all along this had existed, waiting.
Stolen.
Before we even reached the door, it opened. A man stood there, older, tired-looking, his expression already filled with something I recognized immediately.
Guilt.
Ethan, he said quietly. Then his eyes moved to me. Charlotte, Vanessa's father. I had only met him twice before, both times at family gatherings where everything had seemed normal. He had always been polite, a little reserved, nothing unusual. Now he looked like a man who already knew everything had fallen apart. We should talk, Ethan said. He stepped aside without arguing. Inside, the house was just as beautiful.
Clean. Bright.
Carefully maintained. Too carefully. I noticed things immediately. The new furniture, the fresh paint, the small decorative touches that made it feel lived in. Someone had taken time to make this place a home.
Not me. Them.
My chest tightened again, but I kept walking, slowly, taking it all in. The living room opened up to the lake, sunlight pouring in through the windows. There was a couch near the fireplace, a table with books neatly stacked, even framed photos on the wall. Not mine. Never mine. Vanessa appeared in the hallway. She looked different.
No designer clothes.
No perfect hair. Just jeans, a loose sweater. Her face pale and tired. For the first time since I had known her, she didn't look polished. She looked real. And broken. Charlotte, she said softly. I didn't answer. Ethan stepped forward. Where is everyone else? My mother is upstairs, her father said. My son's family left early this morning.
Of course they did.
Avoiding the moment. Avoiding responsibility. Vanessa took a step toward me, her eyes filling with tears again.
I'm so sorry, she said.
I looked at her, really looked this time, and something inside me finally settled. Not peace, not forgiveness, just clarity. Are you? I asked. She froze, because she knew exactly what I meant. Or are you just sorry this is over? Her lips trembled, but no words came out. Ethan didn't wait. We spoke to my assistant, he said. We have records, bank accounts, transfers. Everything leads back to you. Vanessa nodded slowly, like she had already accepted that there was no escape. I didn't plan all of it at first, she said. It started small. It always does, I thought. That first payment, she continued, my parents were about to lose their house. I panicked. I thought if I just borrowed it, I could fix everything before anyone noticed. And then, I asked. She looked down. I couldn't stop. Of course she couldn't. Because once you cross that line, going back means admitting everything. And she hadn't wanted to admit anything. I kept telling myself I would fix it, she said. That I would replace the money. That it was temporary. Temporary? Ethan repeated, his voice cold. 2 years is temporary? I didn't know how to tell you, she said, her voice breaking. Every time I thought about it, it felt too late. It was too late the moment you did it, I said quietly. Her mother came down the stairs then. She looked confused at first, then frightened as she took in the scene, the tension, the silence, the truth hanging in the air. What's going on? She asked. No one answered immediately. So I did. This house, I said, was bought for me. Her face went blank. What? And the money used to live here, I continued, was supposed to support me. Not you. She turned to Vanessa, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief. Is that true? Vanessa didn't answer. She didn't need to. The older woman covered her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. Oh my God, she whispered. Vanessa, what have you done? For a moment, I saw something I hadn't expected. They didn't know. Not really. Maybe they suspected something wasn't right. Maybe they asked questions and accepted easy answers. But they hadn't known the truth. Not like this. Ethan took a step forward. This is over, he said. We're involving lawyers. And the police. Vanessa's head snapped up. Please don't. No, he said firmly. You don't get to ask for anything anymore. I'll pay it back, she cried. I'll fix everything. With what? He asked. You don't have anything that isn't stolen. The room fell silent again. Her father sank into a chair, his face buried in his hands. Her mother stood frozen, like she didn't know where to go or what to say. And Vanessa just stood there, falling apart piece by piece. But it didn't change anything, because some things can't be undone. I walked toward the window, looked out at the lake. For 2 years, I could have been waking up to this view, drinking my coffee here, living a life without constant fear of running out of money. Instead, I had been surviving, while they were living. This is my house, I said finally, not loudly, not angrily, just a simple fact. Ethan nodded. And you'll have it back. Vanessa let out a quiet sob. I never meant to hurt you, she said. I turned to her. But you did, I replied. And the worst part is, you knew. There was nothing left to say after that.
No argument.
No defense.
No excuse.
Just truth. As we walked out of the house, I didn't look back right away. Not because I didn't care, but because I needed time to understand what I was feeling. When I finally turned, the house looked exactly the same as before, beautiful, calm, untouched by everything that had just happened inside. But now I knew the truth, and that changed everything. In the car, Ethan was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I'm going to fix this. Everything. I believed him, but I also knew something else. Some things can be repaired. Others leave marks that never fully disappear. As we drove away from the lake, one thought stayed with me. This wasn't just about getting my house back. This was about reclaiming my life. And I had a feeling the hardest part was still ahead. The days after we left the house didn't slow down, they sped up. Everything that had been hidden for 2 years started surfacing all at once, like something rotten finally breaking through the ground. There was no time to process, no space to breathe. One moment I was just Charlotte, a tired woman trying to get through her shifts, and the next I was sitting in a lawyer's office, hearing words I had never imagined would be connected to my name.
Fraud.
Identity theft. Financial manipulation. It didn't feel real. Ethan's lawyer, Mr. Callahan, was calm in a way that made everything sound even more serious. He spoke clearly, precisely, laying everything out step by step like he had done this 100 times before. But for me, every sentence felt heavier than the last. She didn't just redirect the payments, he said, sliding a thick folder across the table. She created a system. A system. I stared at the documents in front of me. Bank statements, account openings, signatures that looked like mine but weren't. It was all there, printed in black and white, impossible to deny. She opened multiple accounts in your name, he continued. Not just one. 3, from what we can see so far. Different banks. Different branches. My head started to spin. 3? I repeated. Ethan leaned forward, his jaw tight. Why would she need 3? To avoid detection, Mr. Callahan replied simply. Smaller transactions across multiple accounts attract less attention than one large, consistent flow. I felt cold. This wasn't panic. This wasn't desperation. This was planning. And that's not all, the lawyer added. Of course it wasn't. There are credit cards opened under your name as well. Moderate limits, but consistent usage. And he paused for a moment, like even he didn't like what he was about to say. There's evidence of false tax filings. I blinked. I'm sorry, what? She filed taxes using your identity, he said. Reported income that you never received. Claimed deductions. Possibly even refunds. The room went quiet. Ethan looked at me, and for the first time since all of this started, I saw real fear in his eyes. Does that mean? He began. Yes, Mr. Callahan said before he could finish. From the government's perspective, Charlotte may appear to have undeclared income. I felt like the ground disappeared beneath me. I've done everything right, I said quietly. Every year, I file my taxes. I report everything. I don't even understand how this could happen. You did everything right, he said gently. But someone else used your identity to do everything wrong. I leaned back in the chair, my hands gripping the armrests. This could ruin me, I whispered. It could have, he corrected. But now we know. That changes things. Ethan exhaled slowly, running a hand over his face. How much? He asked. Total. Mr. Callahan flipped through the file. Between the monthly payments, additional transfers, credit card usage, and tax-related issues, we estimate approximately $80,000. $80,000. I didn't even know how to react to that number. It didn't feel like money. It felt like something abstract, something too big to belong to my life. I made $18,000 a year. She had taken more than 4 years of my entire income. And the house? I asked. The property is legally in your name, he said. The deed was processed correctly, even though the circumstances were fraudulent. So it's mine, I said. Yes, he confirmed. But reclaiming it will require legal action. The current occupants will need to vacate. I thought about Vanessa's parents again. Their shocked faces. Their confusion. They hadn't stolen from me, but they had lived in what was mine. And now they would lose it.
Just like that.
What happens to them? I asked. Mr. Callahan sighed. If they can prove they had no knowledge of the fraud, they won't face criminal charges. But they can't keep the property. Or anything purchased with stolen funds. Ethan nodded slowly. And Vanessa? The lawyer's expression hardened slightly. She's facing serious charges.
Fraud.
Identity theft. Financial crimes across multiple jurisdictions. If convicted, which is highly likely, she could face prison time. The word hung in the air. Prison. For a moment, I thought I would feel something strong hearing that. Anger. Satisfaction. Relief. But all I felt was tired. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment. Everything looked the same as it always had. The worn couch, the small table, the dim lighting, but it didn't feel the same anymore. It felt temporary now, like I was already halfway out of a life I had been stuck in for too long. Ethan had gone to handle more paperwork, more calls, more arrangements. He kept saying the same thing. I'll fix this. And I believed him. But I also knew this wasn't something that could be fixed overnight. The next morning, we went to the bank. A different one this time. One of the places where I supposedly had an account. Walking in felt strange. I had never been there before, yet according to their records, I had been a customer for over 2 years. The woman at the desk smiled politely as we approached. How can I help you? I need to access my account, I said. She asked for ID. I handed it over. She typed something into her computer, then paused.
That's odd, she said.
My heart skipped. What is? You've never visited this branch before, she said, frowning slightly. But your account has been active for quite some time. Because I didn't open it, I said. Her expression changed immediately. Within minutes, we were sitting in a private office. Documents were pulled up, signatures compared, details reviewed. And there it was again. My name, my information, but not my hand. That signature doesn't match, the bank officer said. Not exactly. It's not mine, I said firmly. She nodded. We'll flag this immediately. This is a clear case of identity theft. Hearing those words out loud made everything feel even more real. Identity theft. Not just a mistake. Not just a misunderstanding. A crime. We left the bank with copies of everything. More evidence. More proof. More weight added to something that was already overwhelming. Later that day, as Ethan drove me back home, he finally spoke. I should have seen it, he said quietly.
No, Iraplia.
You trusted your wife. That doesn't excuse it. No, I said. But it explains it. He didn't answer. When we stopped outside my apartment, I didn't get out right away. I just sat there, looking ahead, thinking about everything that had changed in just a few days. 2 years of my life had been stolen. But now I knew. Now I understood. And that meant something. I'm not going to just sit back, I said suddenly. Ethan looked at me. What do you mean? I mean I want to be involved, I said. Every step. Every decision. This is my life. I'm not handing it over to someone else again. For a moment, he just stared at me. Then he nodded. Okay, he said. We do it together. That night, I slept for the first time since everything started. Not peacefully. Not fully. But enough to feel something different when I woke up. Not just pain. Not just anger. Something else.
Strength. Because the truth was out now.
And once the truth is out, there's no going back. Only forward. The arrest happened faster than I expected. One moment, everything was paperwork, phone calls, meetings with lawyers and bank representatives, and the next, it became real in a way nothing else had. Not documents. Not numbers. Not signatures. Handcuffs. Consequences. Finality. Ethan got the call early in the morning. I could tell from his voice before he even told me. There was something different in it. Not relief, not satisfaction, but a kind of quiet confirmation. It's done, he said. I didn't ask what he meant. I already knew. Vanessa had turned herself in. Her lawyer must have advised her to do it before things escalated further. With the amount of evidence against her, there was no point in running, no point in denying. Everything was documented. Every transaction, every account, every forged signature. There was nowhere left to hide. Still, hearing it out loud made my chest tighten. She's been charged, Ethan said. Fraud, identity theft, financial manipulation. Multiple counts. I nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see me through the phone. And now? I asked. Now we wait. Waiting turned out to be its own kind of punishment. Days stretched into weeks, filled with updates that came in fragments. Court dates scheduled. Evidence reviewed. Statements prepared. I had to tell my story more than once, to lawyers, to investigators, to people who needed facts instead of feelings. Each time, It felt like reliving those 2 years in fast forward. Every skipped meal, every bill I couldn't pay, every moment I told myself to just hold on a little longer. Now there was a reason for all of it, but knowing the reason didn't erase the experience. The hardest part wasn't the legal process. It was everything around it. The way people started looking at me differently. News travels fast in a small community, and this kind of story travels even faster. By the time the first court hearing happened, it felt like everyone already knew. Not just the facts, but their own versions of the facts. Some people were kind. They stopped me at the grocery store, asked how I was doing, told me how terrible it must have been. Their voices were soft, sympathetic, almost too careful. Others were curious. Not cruel, exactly. But there was something in their eyes, like they were trying to figure out how I hadn't known. Like they were quietly questioning me without saying it out loud. And then there were the ones who treated it like a strange kind of luck. Well, at least it all worked out in the end. One woman said with a smile, "You got a house out of it." I didn't respond. Because how do you explain that nothing about this felt like winning? The first time I returned to the house alone, it felt completely different.
Quiet. Empty.
Waiting. Vanessa's family had already moved out. The legal process had been quick once everything was confirmed. They didn't fight it. Maybe because they knew they couldn't. Maybe because they didn't want to. Either way, the house was finally mine. Legally. Undeniably. And yet, it didn't feel like mine. Not yet. I walked through each room slowly. The living room still had traces of their presence. Faint marks where furniture had been. Small details that told a story I hadn't lived. The kitchen was clean, but unfamiliar. The bedrooms felt like someone else's memories. I stood in the doorway of the master bedroom for a long time. This was supposed to be my space. My life. Instead, it had been someone else's for 2 years. I should have felt angry. But mostly I felt disconnected. Ethan arrived later that day with boxes. "Time to start fresh," he said, setting them down. Inside were things he had picked out, new linens, simple decorations, small touches meant to make the house feel different. "Only if you want," he added quickly. "We can change everything. Paint, furniture, anything." I looked around. "No," I said after a moment. "Not everything." He frowned slightly. "Why not?" "Because I need to take it back," I said. "Not erase it." That became my approach to everything. Not pretending it never happened. Not trying to wipe it away, but reclaiming it.
Piece by piece.
The financial side took longer. Much longer than I expected. There were accounts to close, funds to recover, statements to verify. Some of the money was still there, frozen until the legal process was complete. Some had been spent. Some had to be traced through layers of transactions that made my head spin just trying to understand them. Ethan hired professionals to handle most of it, accountants, advisors, people who spoke a language I had never needed before. Numbers, percentages, projections. At one point, someone told me the final amount I would likely recover. 90,000, maybe a little more with interest, they said. I just nodded, because the number didn't feel real. It didn't feel like mine. The trial itself wasn't long. Vanessa didn't fight it. There was too much evidence. Too many records. Too many things she couldn't explain. When the judge read the sentence, I sat there quietly, listening to words that would define the next part of her life. 18 months. Prison. Followed by financial restitution. I thought I would feel something when I heard it. But again, nothing strong came.
No satisfaction.
No relief. Just a quiet understanding that this was the consequence of her choices. After the hearing, Ethan and I walked out of the courthouse together. The sky was gray, the air cold, everything matching the mood perfectly. "It's over," he said. I looked at him. "Is it?" I asked. He hesitated. "No," he admitted. "Not completely." And he was right. Because even though the legal part was ending, the personal part wasn't. Moving into the house officially was strange. Not bad. Not good. Just strange. I brought only what I needed at first. A few clothes, some personal items, small things that felt like me. The rest could come later. Or not at all. The first night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the water. It was quiet in a way I had never experienced before. No city noise. No footsteps from neighbors. Just the sound of the lake and the wind. Peaceful, but unfamiliar. Ethan called that evening, like he had every night lately. "How does it feel?" he asked. I thought about it. "Like I'm visiting someone else's life," I said honestly. He was quiet for a moment. "That will change," he said. "Maybe," I replied. After we hung up, I stayed outside a little longer. The sky darkened slowly, the water reflecting the last light of the day. It was beautiful, exactly the kind of place people dream about. And yet, I didn't feel like I belonged there.
Not yet.
Because this wasn't just about a house. It was about everything that had been taken.
Time.
Trust. A sense of security I hadn't even realized I was missing until it was too late. But as I sat there, one thought became clear. This was mine now. Not because someone gave it to me, not because it was written on paper, but because I had fought to get it back. And maybe that was the beginning of something real. A year changes more than you expect. Not in loud, dramatic ways, but in quiet shifts you only notice when you stop and look back. I was standing on the porch that morning, the same one that had once felt toujours, distant, like I didn't belong there. Now, it felt different. Not perfect, not magical, but settled. Like the house had finally accepted me, or maybe I had accepted it. The lake was calm, reflecting the pale morning sky, and I held my coffee with both hands, letting the warmth sink in. This had become my routine. Every morning. No rushing, no calculating how much I could spend that day, no anxiety waiting for the next bill. Just time. That alone still felt like a luxury. A year ago, I didn't have time. I had survival. Now I had something else. Ethan's car pulled into the driveway right on schedule. He had started visiting every week, sometimes more. At first, it had been driven by guilt. I could see it in everything he did, every question he asked, every time he checked if I needed something. But over time, that changed. It became natural.
Real.
He knocked once, then let himself in like he used to years ago. "Morning, Mom," he called. "Kitchen," I replied. He walked in carrying a paper bag, setting it on the table with a small smile. "I brought breakfast." "You always bring breakfast," I said, but I was already reaching for plates. "I know," he said. "I like doing it." We sat down together like we had started doing every week. Simple things.
Coffee. Food.
Conversation. It didn't sound like much, but after everything that had happened, it meant more than anything expensive ever could. "How are you sleeping?" he asked. "Better," I said. "Most nights." That was true. Not perfect. Some nights I still woke up thinking about everything, about the apartment, about those 2 years, about how easily things had been taken from me. But it didn't control me anymore. "Any updates?" I asked. He knew what I meant. "Nothing new," he said. "She's still serving her sentence. No appeals that will change anything." I nodded. Vanessa had become distant in my mind. Not forgiven. Not forgotten. Just no longer central. For a long time, everything revolved around what she did. Now my life didn't. "I've been thinking," Ethan said after a moment. "That's dangerous," I replied lightly. He smiled, but it faded quickly. "I met someone." I looked up. That wasn't something I expected to hear. "Already?" I asked.
"It's been a year," he said.
That was true. It just didn't feel like it. "What's her name?" I asked. "Lena," he said. "She's different." "They always are at first," I said. He shook his head slightly.
"No."
"I mean it."
"She's honest."
"Very honest. Sometimes too honest." I raised an eyebrow. "That sounds promising." He smiled again, this time more genuinely. "She knows everything," he added, "about what happened." "And she stayed?" I asked. "Yes." I nodded slowly. That matters. After breakfast, we went outside. I had started working on the garden months ago. Nothing fancy, just small changes. Plants I chose, things I wanted, little pieces of myself added to a place that had once felt cheesy.
There was something healing about it.
Growing something slowly, watching it change over time. Unlike everything else in my life, this part couldn't be rushed or stolen. You've done a lot here, Ethan said, looking around. I had time, I replied.
And now you use it, he said.
That was the difference. Before, time had been something I chased. Now it was something I had. After he left, I stayed outside for a while longer. The silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt full. Not empty. Not lonely. Just quiet in a way that allowed me to think without fear. Later that day, I did something I had been putting off. I sat down at the table with a piece of paper, and I started writing a letter. Not to Vanessa. To her parents. It took me a long time to figure out what to say. Because I didn't hate them. They had lost their home too. Their stability. Their sense of normal. All because of someone else's choices. So, I wrote the truth. That I didn't blame them. That I hoped they were okay. That none of this should have happened the way it did. I didn't know if I would send it, but writing it felt important. That evening, I walked through the house slowly, room by room, noticing how much had changed. The furniture was mine now. The small details were mine. The silence was mine. And for the first time, it didn't feel like I was living inside someone else's story. I stopped in front of the window, overlooking the lake. A year ago, I had stood there feeling like a stranger. Now, I just felt present. People still talked about what happened. Of course they did. Stories like that don't disappear quickly. But it didn't affect me the same way anymore. Because I understood something now that I didn't before. This wasn't a story about loss. Not anymore. Yes, something had been taken from me. Time I couldn't get back. Trust that had been broken. But something else had happened too. Something I didn't expect. I got my life back. Not the life I thought I had, but the one I deserved. Ethan changed too. He wasn't distant anymore. He wasn't just successful. He was present. And that mattered more than anything he could buy. As the sun started to set, I went back out to the porch. Same place. Same view. But a completely different feeling. I thought about the woman I had been 2 years ago. Tired. Quietly struggling. Convincing herself that things would get better someday. And I realized something. She had been stronger than she knew. She had survived everything without even understanding why it was happening. Now I knew. And knowing changed everything. My phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. She wants to cook dinner for you next week. Italian. Should I say yes? I smiled. Tell her yes, I replied. But only if she's okay with honest feedback. I put the phone down and looked out at the water one more time.
Calm. Steady.
Unchanged. Vanessa had tried to take my future.
For a while, she succeeded.
But in the end, she only delayed it. And now it was mine.
Completely.
The question is, what would you do if you were in my place?